Okay, if you turn to page 63, we're going to go over a few problems which will help you review for Quiz B. The first is figuring out for number 1. You have -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. This is 100 over 81, 10 over 9, 1, 9/10, 81 over 100. And you are told that you are to figure out if this represents an exponential function, and if it is, write the rule for the function. Now, if it's exponential, x increases by 1, which works, and y increases by a multiple of a number. In other words, you're not adding a number each time, you're multiplying. Well, if you go from 1 to 9/10, obviously you're multiplying by 9/10. If you multiply 9/10 by 9/10, you get 81/100. So here, it's obvious that our multiple is 9/10. Now, in your rule, the multiple is b. So I know in the equation y equals ab to the x, b is 9/10. So this is 9/10 to the x. Notice you have to put the 9/10 in parentheses, because if you wrote 9/10 to the x, it would look like just the 9 was getting raised. Now I have to figure out a. We know that if x is 0, b turns to 1, so not y equals a. So when x is 0, I look at the value of y. In this case, it's 1, so that means a equals 1. So this answer is y equals 1 times 9/10 to the x, or you just write y equals 9/10 to the x. Now, number 2 happens to be linear. I'll let you guys figure that one out on your own. Number 3, they give us a graph, and the graph is obviously exponential decay. And it tells us that it's either decay or growth. So this is obviously decay. Now, they ask us to write a rule for the function. Well, the answer's right there, but let's see how they came up with the answer. So they give us 2 points, 0, 15, and 1, 5. So how do you come up with a rule if you're told it's exponential decay, but they want to know the rule? Well, we know that when x is 0, the y value is a. So in this case, we know a equals 15. So I do know that y equals 15 times b to the x. So I have to figure out what b is. If only I knew an x and a y. Oh, look, I do know an x and a y. This is x, this is y. So if I plug in x and y into my equation, I can solve for b. So in this case, b to the first is the same as b. If I divide both sides by 15, b equals 1/3. So I know a is 15, b is 1/3, which means it must be y equals 15 times 1/3 to the x. And that is our answer. Okay? Now, you would do number 4 the same way, but number 5 looks a little different. So let's look at number 5. For number 5, they give you -2 and 2/9, and they give you -1 and 2/3. And that's all they give you. Now, they're not giving me a y-intercept. So this is going to be a little trickier. So I'm going to make a table, and I'm going to say, well, they tell me already that it's exponential, so I know these are increasing by 1. If I can just figure out what you multiply 2/9 by to get 2/3, that would be my multiplier. So I'm going to say 2/9 times what multiplier equals 2/3. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2/9, and we see that 2/3 divided by 2/9 is the same as 2/3 times 9/2, which equals 9/3, which equals 3. So that means my multiplier is 3. So, if my multiplier is 3, that means y equals a times 3 to the x. Now, if I pick this point, I can say 2/3 equals a times 3 to the negative 1. Well, 3 to the negative 1 is 1/3. So 2/3 equals 1/3 a. If I divide both sides by 1/3, which is the same as multiplying by 3, I get a equals 2. So that means my rule is y equals 2 times 3 to the x. Now, another way you could have done this is if you have your table, -2, 2/9, -1, 2/3, 0. If I know I'm multiplying this by 3, I know the next term, if I multiply by 3, is 0. So this is 2. So when x is 0, that number is my a. So that's another way you could find your a. Okay. Now the last one on this page is an exponential growth word problem. Okay? So I know if it's exponential growth, I say y equals a times 1 plus r to the t. I know this is growth. Oh, it's not growth. I know this is decay because it says attendance has been declining. So the original attendance is 18,000 and it's declining by 5.5%. So the function over time would be y equals 18,000 times 1 minus 0.055 raised to the t. Because when it asks for a function over time, you have to have two unknowns, the y and the t. Then it says from 2000 to 2005, they want to know the attendance in 2005. So that means t equals 5. So I write 18,000 times 1 minus 0.055 to the 5. Okay? So, on your calculator, you just plug this in exactly. On the calculator, you would do, this would be a caret, and the answer you would get is 13,565. And you can round that.